Welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I am Helen Verroux. This podcast is dedicated to help anyone connected to preteens and teens to give them tools, empower and inspire teachers, high school senior leaders, and parents to build the future leaders of tomorrow. We discuss about controversial and relevant topics related to the world of education, the main problems you are facing, and solutions to help you navigate your journey. We want to make a positive change in education by bringing on experts that will give you a different perspective on how you can solve the hardship you are facing today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Next Generation with Coach Helen. I am so excited today because we have an amazing guest speaker. His name is Rob Kamranpoor. He's a founder of the RK Leadership and a seasoned leader in the utility industry. He launched his venture in 2023 to provide personalized coaching. He's a professional engineer with an MBA and LLM. Rob excels in project management, operational efficiency, and building engaged teams. His aim is to really enhance leadership skills across various sectors, helping leaders achieve their goals and advance their careers. You all know that in this podcast, we want to impact, to inspire, to develop leaders. And Rob has such an amazing experience because he's worked in the industry, the utility industry, and now he's going to come to share with you about his experience. So welcome, Rob, on the podcast.
Good afternoon, Helen. Nice to be here today.
Thank you so much. This is interesting because you've been in the utility industry, and now we're going to talk more into the education industry. So you're going to share really what you've learned all these years as an engineer and share really with the audience how you have started in terms of becoming a leadership coach, how this journey has started for you, Rob.
Sure. I'll go back a little bit, Helen. So when I finished my university, my engineering degree, I was part of a volunteering team, helping the younger engineers. So the group was called IEEE Toronto. It's the Institution of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. So it's a global, it's a global kind of community.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did is we were running events for younger engineers in the province or in the city of Toronto. And we started off our events with just 5 people attending it. And we build our own team together. So I started off with being a community relations was my title there. So I worked my way up to the chair of this of this committee. And after 7 years or something like that, I was able to put my own team together, and before I left, we had about 750 people attending our events.
Wow.
So yeah, we changed things up a little bit. We created some diversity in there. We brought in the different disciplines of engineering and mixed it up. And that's where I really loved the leadership concept. And then fast forward, I was working for the utility company, doing a lot of project management, again, coordinating with different people. You're leading the project with various people. So again, I love that, the communication, coordinating with people. And then years after that, I started applying for a leadership role. It took me several tries and failed many times to get get into leadership. But once I got there, I fell in love with it. It's something I think I was really passionate to do, and was coaching people indirectly on my teams in various capacities. And then last year, I started sharing. I never had social media except LinkedIn. So uh, I said the only way I'm able to spread my message, globally to a bigger, broader audience was to use the social media platforms. So I started creating videos. I had no idea about algorithms and all this social media nonsense. So I started just posting videos. I got some help. I hired some people to help me. And a lot of people reached out and said, you know, why don't you do some coaching? So I started coaching. My landlord was my first client. And then last July, I left my 9 to 5, pursued the coaching on a full-time basis, and then started my engineering company in January. And I've had I think over 10 to around 15 clients so far in terms of the coaching. So you know, I'm just hoping it grows, it scales, and the biggest fulfillment I get, Helen, is by helping people and watching them, you know, become better in their life. So that's kind of how I've got into coaching in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it because leadership and coaching is the same, I would say, language, depending on different industries, still the same thing. We should know what is a good trait of leadership. We should know what is a good trait of coaching. And it's kind of the same thing that we do. And I love how you love to empower people. You want to make their life so much better. And the audience listening, I actually met Rob maybe a month and a half ago. And I love now his humility because I didn't even know all this stuff about him. You know, we discussed, I came to on his podcast, he was sharing, he was asking me questions about myself, and knowing that he has done so much in his life and he's in that, I would say, phase of his life where he wants to really make a difference, a bigger impact based on his experience is just commendable. So let's a bit think about Rob, how, you know, what do staff complain about the most in most of an organization? What do you think that is the main thing that staff complains about? Because we talk about leadership, right? You're a leadership coach. So
Yeah.
what are the things that staff complains most about in most of an organization? And I think it's the same thing in education, in the educational system as well. So what are the things that you hear in your coaching?
Oh boy, I think a common trend is they complain about their managers, their bosses, the culture, the lack of support. You know, I can drill down to so many aspects being micromanaged. I just created a video yesterday, Helen. Actually, funny you bring this up. I was sitting in an interview, and the candidate was complaining about the current role that this individual is in, and they keep bringing up ideas to their manager, and they said, "I'm not being heard."
Mm.
And they're not listening to me. I feel like they're not listening. So I stopped her and I said, "How does that make you feel?" And the individual said, "Very frustrated. I don't feel valued." And this is
Wow.
the trend I've heard so many times, people not being heard because the managers or the leaders are not present. They're not there. They're not listening to people. And guess what? Why do you think this individual is sitting in the interview? Now
They're
you're
not.
losing, yeah, you're losing a great resource because they're not happy.
Wow.
And Helen, you probably hear this. There's a phrase that says people don't leave organizations, they leave managers,
Wow.
right? I want to drill that down a little bit. I would disagree with that a little bit because I also say absolutely people leave their managers because they're so frustrated and they've had enough.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
also you have to, you know, get to the root cause, which is the organization itself and the culture, because the culture is breeding that manager. The culture
Mm.
is empowering that manager to do what they're doing to these people, right? So you can't just blame the manager. And, you know, sometimes I'll stick up for the manager saying, look, what if they're a new manager that had no training, no coaching, no mentoring? How can you blame them? Right? So you can't just blame the people. You got to blame the organization is accountable, just as accountable as that manager is. And
Mm.
culture starts at the top, right? So we need to kind of rephrase that a little bit, in my opinion.
I love that. And I think even in the educational system, it's kind of the same thing.
Yes.
People wants to be heard, people wants to feel valued, especially staff, especially students. And it's very interesting because you coming on the podcast, we talk about utility organization and leadership coaching in this field, but it's really applies to the same way to any industry. And people wants to feel heard, people wants to feel valued, and I think that most of the time is because, as you were saying, we don't bring leadership in those organizations where we understand. Really, I'm going to ask you that question. What do you think are the main traits of good leadership from everything that you've seen so far? What do you think is supposed to be the main trait of good leadership? Because this is what is missing in most of
Yeah.
organizations.
To me, two of the most important things is humanity and humility. My philosophy is lead with love and kindness. And if you don't have those, if you don't have empathy for people, if you don't have that kindness, good luck getting people to be on board with you, to respect you, and to kind of, going above and beyond for you, because you'll have a very hard time, difficult time connecting with people.
Hmm.
And I always say, how do you train empathy? How do you train kindness? Right? These are very important. And again, they're they're part of your characteristics, right? They're part of your character. And this is why I always say hire for character, train for the skill. Right. So those are very important for me, Helen.
Wow. That's really deep. And I think that most people don't have it because of maybe the way they were brought up, maybe of the things that they've seen, of the trauma that they experience in their life. And I think it's something that's how really can you actually like help someone to think differently and to have empathy, because there are a lot of people in those kind of organizations who don't have it. So how do you really allow someone to see that in themselves, because they need to see that to be self-aware of what they actually have? How do you actually help them see that, especially if you just you're not really valued in that culture?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Helen. And it all comes back to, how much time are you spending coaching your people, right? How are you developing your people? Again, my belief is that you have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead other people. That's the problem that a lot of these, managers have, is they can't lead themselves. How do you expect to lead other people? Because they've got so much anger, frustration, insecurities,
Mm.
self-doubt in themselves, and they reflect that onto their people. And that's why, they treat people poorly. They get angry at people. They don't delegate their work. They're always hoarding stuff in. And delegation is an important part of being a leader. So there's so many aspects to that, Helen. And I think, again, as senior leaders, one of the problems I see with a lot of organizations in today's society, in today's world, is people are so busy with their 9 to 5, accountabilities, and all these companies are trying to be more efficient by trying to do more with less, and they're actually neglecting their people. Who's coaching their direct peers? I would challenge everybody out there to show me how many hours they spend coaching their direct reports, and you'll see the trend, right? Because if you look at their calendar, their 9 to 5 beyond is filled. They don't even have time to eat lunch, for God's sakes, right? And that's not healthy. That's not good. That's not the way that you're not leading yourself.
And
So
that comes to our next question. Would you define a toxic environment? This
how do
is
you?
it. Would you define a toxic environment?
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot of these saying, this is the toxic environment. And I think you actually mentioned that in one of your videos. So how would you define a toxic environment?
So yeah, a toxic environment is where, again, you're micromanaging people, you create that negative environment, you're not performance managing certain individuals who create that toxicity. And in a lot of cases, that toxic environment also is generated from the managers, right? If you're just sitting in your office all day, you're neglecting your people, and you're not really seeing what's going out there. You're not, and people are coming and telling you that, hey, we've got issues. And again, it goes back to that point that we made. People are not being heard. You let gossip. If you're not being transparent with your teams, gossip will, oh my God, if that thing grows, it becomes toxic, because this person tells something to this person, but they add something else to it, and so on, and it just explodes, and you don't want that. So that toxic culture, it can all be avoided by having a proper leader in place that can create that positive environment. Because at the end of the day, remember one thing: you're also accountable for all your people, because you're the one that put them in those seats. You hired them, so you saw something good, or else, unless your hiring practices are totally off, you're accountable for it. You can't keep blaming people for what they're doing, because you hired them. So take accountability for your actions, right?
I totally agree. And this is why we need to foster more conducive environment, because environment plays a big part in the way people grow. I heard a saying that says that if you want a flower to grow and to blossom, do not change the flower, but change the environment. And I think environment has a big part to play in the way people see themselves, in the way they flourish. And I can think as well that in most of organizations, there are a lot of followers. There are a lot of people who are still looking for themselves, who don't know what they want to do in life, who are looking for a leader who can see value in them. And I think, like, how do you help a leader? First of all, this is even a bit like of a cycle, because how can you help a leader who is not aware of growing into his leadership skills? How can that leader really empower the staff followers to really grow into leadership development? Because it comes with self-awareness. So how can a leader who is not even self-aware of his leadership ability to grow in his leadership ability, really foster developing leaders in his organization? How can they do that?
So again, it goes back to the point, Helen, of that self-awareness and self-leadership. So again, you got to lead yourself first. And another way of doing this is your leader on top of you. Again, if they're coaching you properly, they build that confidence in you. They help you, they give you that freedom to make decisions. And if you make a mistake, they put up their hand. So they give you that ability to now make decisions, be able to, gain that courage, be motivated, you know, have that confidence to do things that you weren't able to do before. And then once you start building on that confidence, you can start developing those certain leadership skills. But again, they also have to lead by example. So now if you're seeing somebody that's kind and that has empathy, you're going to mimic what they're doing, because this is something I always tell people who want to become leaders, is always try to see what your managers, leaders in any organization, anywhere you go in your career, follow them and watch them very closely. What are they doing that's good? What are they doing that's not good? Because once you get an opportunity to be a leader now, you take the good and you create your own leadership style. You take the bad and you avoid doing those things, because guess what? If you hated doing what somebody did to you and you're doing it to someone else, then you become a hypocrite. And we've got a lot of hypocrites out there.
Yes.
Because I guarantee you, if your kid was under that same toxic manager, you wouldn't like how they would treat your kid. So you're doing that to someone else's kid, right? Without even really realizing in some cases what you're doing to people.
And I think it all comes with loving people. I think we need more leaders who love people, who see the value in each one who see that we are souls, we are human beings, we are looking for meaningful connections, and really just treating people well. Because sometimes when you follow just the book or the performance, you are not really connected to the human experience. You have people who want you to understand where they're coming from, because everybody has different scenarios, everybody has a story to tell, everybody has problems they're dealing at home and they're dealing at work. So I think it's important that as a leader, like, people have empathy to see where their staff are at and really trying to understand. It's all about understanding and seeing what they are going through, each one of them. So when they come and ask you for certain things, you don't really put a wall and you don't put a curtain and say, no, I can't do that because this is not what the book says, this is not what the policy says. But you actually see them from a human perspective, and you say, you know what, I understand this is not what the book says, but I want to really help you in that situation. And seriously, I am a John Maxwell certified coach. So I love when you talk about the love solid ground, when you actually, people trust you before they actually see what you're doing. So it's so important that you build trust, you connect with your hearts.
Yes.
People see who you are as a person, and then they will actually go the extra mile for you. Do you have something to say about what I said? Because I can see that what I said really intrigued you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, one of the key aspects, you nailed it. You have to build trust with your people. If you don't have that trust, good luck trying to get buy-in with anything you're doing. And again, I hear a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't get too friendly with your team. I call bullshit on that, because the way I see it is you can still be friendly with your team, but what people don't do is they don't create those boundaries. Create those expectations, create the boundaries. You can still be friends with them, because look, your leadership impacts them not only inside the work, but also outside in their day-to-day life. So if you're treating people poorly, guess what? That stress is now, it's taken out of the office. When they go home, it impacts their family, their kids, themselves. So just like being a good leader also impacts them, because now they can go home happy, they can engage with their families, they can love their kids, they can feel good about themselves. You're empowering people. It's so powerful. We're not ticky boxes. We're not a checklist that you give and say, hey, follow this, and I say this, you're dealing with emotional beings. We're all emotional beings, right? And if you can't deal with emotional beings, then that's what you need to work on, because that connection with people, you nailed it, Helen. If you don't have that connection, you won't build that trust.
Yes, and we need to build more people who are fulfilled and really caring about their mental health.
Yeah.
Mental health is a big subject nowadays, and we have to focus on that to have healthy, conducive environment where people feel welcome. They feel that they want to go to work and they don't actually despise what they're doing. And obviously, ultimately, it will create retention, like massive retention. People would stay in your company for years, and
Yes.
you would wonder why, because you have actually worked on yourself and you are actually showing them the human side of you, not just the title, not just the position, but you're showing them that part, that vulnerability. I think as a leader, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be transparent.
Yeah.
You don't have, as you were saying, to say your whole life, but you need to create boundaries, but at the same time create that unique experience with each one of them, and see and actually build an attitude of service. I think when you serve your community, you serve your employees, you serve people around you, it gives you a place to see who you are really, and to see your motives as a person as well. So yeah, I love everything you said, Rob. So what is your last message now to any parents, any senior leaders, or any teacher who hear you right now? What would you tell them?
Yeah, my message is to become a leader, as a parent, as a teacher, as an individual. Always remember that the leadership doesn't apply to the office environment. Leadership applies to your house, your family, your kids, your relationship, your marriage, your spouse, etc., etc. So it's not a hat that you take off and put it behind the door once you enter your house or enter a different environment. You're a leader in the community. You can be a leader in this world. In anywhere you go, you can apply those leadership skills. So, and if you're, if you're lacking certain leaderships, if you have self-doubt, and it starts with the mindset, build your mindset, get help. If you need help, get help. Put your ego aside, park your ego. Nobody was perfect. We all came from failures. We failed so many times. God, if I can just, talk about how many times I've failed in life and what I've learned, but I just refuse to give up. It's anybody can do it. If you put your mind to it, I promise you, you can do anything you want in this world.
Yes.
So that would be my message to people.
I love it. And to summarize, we can say, as John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing less, nothing more.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Rob, for being in the podcast. Everyone listening to the podcast, make sure you comment, you like it, and you share with people that will benefit from the subject that we had today with Rob Kamranpoor. So thank you so much, Rob, for coming here.
Thank you, Helen. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you connect with us on Instagram at The Case for Success. Check also my Linktree and become an affiliate of the Success Guide for Teens Academy, a program that will empower your school community as a parent, teacher, and high school senior leader. Do not hesitate to reach out, comment, and share. Until then, see you in the next episodes.